Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the suicidal king, right? When people play cards, there's a card where there's a king with a sword, and it's kind of behind his head, if I remember correctly, and it is said to symbolize the suicidal king, the king of hearts. Now, in reality, this is the greatest card, right? The King of Kings, Christ. Christ on the cross, what have you. So obviously I'm not going to be moved by the oppressor's moves on the chessboard, if you will. This is a process that I start off winning, and there's no way for me to lose. God chose me because I'm going to finish what I started, what God started with the human race, and seal them in hell after I'm done. It's just how much people are going to be punished. That's the nature of nature. If you scramble to do the right thing every generation, your family becomes greater. If you scramble to do the wrong thing, it becomes worse. And there comes a point where time is up. That's why these recent events with Donald Trump occurred at checkpoints. Now, I'm not orchestrating these events, okay? These things are something that the opposition view is coming up with. The white supremacists, the Jewish supremacists, and the LGBT supremacists. On some level, they feel deep regret and sorrow for those of them who are not completely out of their minds. And, criminals tend to not like each other. It comes together a certain way. But it reminds us that I have the upper hand, that these worldly people, they don't want to die. They're building something in this world. I'm building something where thieves cannot break in, where moths don't ruin things. I'm storing riches with God Almighty. And as I look at this situation, I live by one of the most dangerous cities in America, Detroit. Not far away is Chicago. A lot of people here probably sympathize with me. A lot of people here probably don't like me. Don't know. I'm targeted. I'm not moving the slightest. So let's talk about some clear-cut logical truths here. Clear-cut truths. Clear-cut logic and societal ills. Point number one. The slave masters of Greece, ancient Greece and ancient Rome, Roman antiquity, what have you, merged with the feudal lords in Europe. So they merged with them over time, right? When Rome expanded into Europe and occupied northern Europe for hundreds of years, England especially, what ended up happening was that their cultures and their families merged. So you had these kind of slave masters, and you had these feudal lords, and they merged into this kind of slave master feudal lord system. There's a thin line between the two systems, so they kind of reinforced each other. That's where you get white culture. It's a culture that is based in, a sort of behind the scenes feudal system that is derived from the slave masters of Greece and Rome, and there are a bunch of people in cults, and the feudal lords in Europe, and there are a bunch of people in cults, especially by the time the Romans had occupied England specifically, which was like the major colonial nation during that wave of colonialism, right? They said the sun never sets on the English Empire. So point number two, both major political parties here in America are dominated by white and whitewashed cultures. And the politics of the groups, right, the groupings in those political parties are central to their subculture. So the politics of the Democratic Party is central to the subcultures on the left, for the most part. So some people don't consider themselves Democrats, but you get what I'm saying. The politics of the Republican Party, MAGA, what have you, they're central to the subcultures on the right. They set certain boundaries. They mark, keyword mark, certain boundaries on behalf of a country that is in submission to the elite and not to God, like every nation on the planet. That's why you have council culture on the left, right? They counsel people. Point number three. Now, at this point, I'm going to go through a list of problems that prove my point here. Problems that could be avoided if we had a universal moral system instead of a system of white supremacy, Jewish supremacy, LGBT supremacy, what have you, that's assisted by token minorities. The core problems that Americans face are core problems in white culture in general. These problems come from white culture and express themselves in American culture because you keep choosing white culture to reinforce white social norms. The problems aren't coming from Muslims so much. The problems that come from Muslims are few and far between. They're not coming from Eskimos. They're not coming from, the Chinese so much. These problems are minor problems, minor issues compared to these problems I'm going to list from A to Z. And there's more problems than these ones. This is just what I came up with off the top of my head this morning. A, the lack of a sound moral order. It sticks out like a sore thumb. B, an education system that doesn't effectively teach the difference between universal social norms, which are ideal, right? Universal moral social norms, right? What's universal, right? Treating people fairly, right? So universal social norms and universal pinpoint and moral precision derived norms are the same thing. So again, an education system that doesn't effectively teach the difference between universal social norms, which are ideal, and mere white and whitewashed American social norms. C, a system of coercion. And that's a video series for another day. D, high rape rates. E, sick behind-the-scenes so-called solutions, right? They're doing things behind the scenes. They're not solving anything. They're just creating more problems. F, a broken financial system. That's, again, it's a video series for another day. G, a lack of effective debates, right? There's a lack of effective debates that are grounded in morality, right? A lack of effective debates that are grounded in morality. H, the lack of fair and adequate law enforcement. Well, law enforcement does a good job that treats people fairly. We want to kind of get these poor areas to move into legal endeavors, legal financial pursuits. We don't want them selling drugs and abusing each other and abusing each other's families and trying to, think of themselves as gangsters and thugs. We want them to do things that are worthwhile. They make their lives worthwhile and their communities worthwhile. And to do so, we need fair and adequate law enforcement. That's one of the things we need there. I, toxic and shallow dating. J, fanatic materialism. Life isn't just about money and nice things. It's about having a relationship with God, a worthwhile relationship with people. If you absolutely are against monotheism no matter what, at least try with all your heart to be moral and to find the essence of morality. And if you can find it, and I'm sure that it only comes from obeying God through me, but if you think you found it, explain to me what you think you have found. And I'll explain to you where you're coming short, but why you're somewhat on the right path, in a sense. K, large levels of child molestation. L, broken families. M, unchecked psychological operations when domestic psychological operations are illegal. N, remote brain hacking. O, massive data centers that aren't taxed enough. P, they're driving up the cost of electricity, what have you. P, a lack of housing. Q, homelessness. R, a broken immigration system. Again, we could build a region for these people, tiny homes. We could have saved so much money. We could have added so much to the economy if we effectively managed the undocumented immigrants. We'd have enough law enforcement in a certain region for them. Okay, there's so many things we could do, but society doesn't even do it. They just argue from two illogical standpoints. One is like white supremacy. The other one is just letting them in and feeding into the idea that people need what they don't need, which is white supremacy to check the flow of immigration. It's stupid. S, government-run churches. Why is a corrupt government telling the churches what to teach? And the people behind that corrupt government, why are they telling the churches what to teach? T, fanatic cults that abuse people. I want them to stop abusing people. U, internet censorship. V, substance abuse and a lack of rehabs. W, They refuse to draw logical lines when it comes to LGBT rights. We should have deep conversations about these things in a way that everyone, gay, LGBT, straight, etc., can agree on. X, large fires. There's all these huge fires in the country, especially California. Why haven't they got this thing under control with all the technologies, all the resources, all the people who are willing to come here and looking for jobs? Why aren't they cutting fire breaks, building more, fire stations? There's things they could do. Why aren't they doing a thorough analysis and getting to the bottom of it? It goes back to poor governance, and it goes back to a culture of poor governance. Now, what culture dominates society? Why? The lack of a massive farming program and food insecurity. Z, a lack of sound healthcare processes and poor health due to what is being consumed. Now, I know a lot of you don't want me to say this, but I have to say this to do the situation justice. I don't say things based on what people want me to say. I say things based on what is fair and just and right. No offense to anybody. So real fast here. What do you call somebody who's 12.5% black and almost completely white, who looks white? You call them white. What do you call a group of people that's been roaming through Europe for hundreds of years that ends up looking white? They're white. So white Jews are basically white. Okay? If you say they're not, are you going to make a distinction when it comes to the Greeks and the Spanish and maybe the Irish, maybe the Italians? Okay, where do you draw the line? What is white and what isn't? And we see those cultural commonalities between, whites and white Jews. Most white Jews are not religious. And the ones who are religious, they tend to be not very religious. So they're basically in white culture. So to say that it's the Jews is just pointing right back to white culture. Whether you think it's mostly token minorities or white Jews or white people, the problem is still found in white culture as a major grouping. And there is no solution that has been presented that's logical and fair to everybody in white culture. But when it comes to universal, pinpointed moral precision, it is the clear-cut solution. Thank you.